So today in WOC, in a discussion about a current news topic, a WOC user stated, "It's no secret that the liberal left media has an agenda they push." To which I replied, "A variant of the phrase liberal agenda has popped up. What's that? Can someone tell me?" Eventually the same user answered me with, "Liberal agenda, take from the haves and give it to the have-nots. Create genders that don't exist or create non-genders and force the world to accept their bullshit thinking." I asked if there really was such an agenda, and if so, if I could read a copy of it. I was eventually told by the same user that this was a dumbass request. So I took to the internet to see if I could locate an actual liberal agenda. Not surprisingly, I found that there was no actual liberal agenda written out, no guidebook for the aspiring liberal, no manifesto whatsoever for the political left. But like the WOC user, tons of people were using this phrase and providing their own definitions of the liberal agenda. And just some of the definitions are as follows. The liberal agenda is an Illuminati agenda, is to impoverish already impoverished American groups, is a eugenics program, is a justification for war, is a method to bring out the end times, is perpetrated through a Hollywood liberal propaganda cult, is political brainwashing starting with Sesame Street, is a covert plan to destroy Latinos, is the cause of massive ESPN layoffs, is a gay agenda. According to Fox News, algebra is a liberal agenda. The liberal agenda originates solely from white people, is associated with the UN's Agenda 21. It's pushed through Marvel Comics. It's Obama and Hillary's method to kill God. It's a part of the public university prayer. It's a plan to destroy America. It's a social agenda to which liberal professors recruit students. It's a method for Facebook to ban those who disagree with them. It's a method to convert the people of Kentucky to a different political party. It's a New World Order communist agenda. It's a method of rewriting the Constitution. It's a dependency on government. It's an amnesty plan. It's a plan to help ISIS fight the second coming of Christ for the NWO, involving FEMA camps and predictive programming. It's a surveillance operation. It's pushed through the SpongeBob SquarePants show. It's a plan to harm families in Nova Scotia. It's perpetuated through the Girl Scouts. It's a plan for electoral reform. It's a social engineering plan. It's a conspiracy by mental health professionals. It's a series of Starbucks videos. It's another term for Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. It's a satanic Illuminati gay agenda. It's trying to prove that Jesus was transgender. It's conspiring to write bad reviews of Kid Rock recordings. The liberal agenda will cause blacks to run our country into the ground. It's the reason for Flint, Michigan's water contamination. It's a trade agenda. It's a war on white people. This is all from the internet. The phrase liberal agenda is little more than a phrase to describe anything that a non-liberal dislikes. A phrase that can define everything is a phrase that defines nothing. While it is likely that anybody associating themselves with a political movement may have an agenda, only non-liberals use the term liberal agenda. Most users of the phrase are either the religious or conservatives who actually do have an agenda which they publish. While their document predictably parrots typical conservatives' pseudo-patriotic rhetoric, such as the frustrations associated with a bloated government and some of Reagan's narcoleptic doggerel, they claim, in their own words, conservatives face a new urgency to address an old charge: that the policies of limited government benefit the wealthy and the well-connected over everybody else. Why the urgency to address it or even challenge it at all? Upon formation of the new U.S. government, the only group allowed access to voting and enacting any kind of policy were white wealthy landowners, who themselves were a very small minority, assuming a very large portion of control for themselves. It took centuries of struggle before the rights of blacks and women to vote were secured, and even then those groups were subjected to so-called literacy tests and poll taxes designed to deny suffrage to these groups. Current drug laws enacted and enforced by conservatives, which incarcerate an unproportional number of blacks, keep blacks from the voting booths en masse. Further gains by other groups such as homosexuals and transgender people pose an even greater threat at the voting booth, and more disenfranchising laws are drawn up to quell whatever opinions they may render at the voting booth. The stated agenda of the conservatives is on its surface a noble and principled cause. However, this is but a ruse to convince those who are not part of the small minority of white wealthy landowners to work on their behalf. The modern incarnation of minority, white, wealthy landowners are corporations, who, not so ironically, are now considered to be people. This law of the land being fought for and brought to you by the agenda of conservatives. These ersatz right-wing memes have caused their conservative followers to vote against their own interests while continuing to disenfranchise their perceived opposition, upon whom are stated to be the cause of America's problems, because of their non-existent agenda. In conclusion, it's precisely those who employ the phrase liberal agenda who actually have an agenda. In their false sense of patriotism and misidentification of their enemy, they've unknowingly and unwittingly enabled a regress of America to its primordial state, a plutocracy whose concentrated, tightly controlled power was handed to them by people fighting against an agenda that never existed.